Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of various individuals sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm excited to share another episode featuring Christina Renna, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey. As President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Christina oversees a team of 10 and has direct oversight of the Chamber's work in public policy, education, workforce development, membership growth, retention, and overall experience. She joined the Chamber in 2007 and served as Director of Government Affairs through early 2010. Returning in 2014 as Vice President, then rose through the ranks before taking over the helm of the organization in 2020. Prior to her most recent stint at the Chamber, in 2010, Christina served in state government for 4 years, including as Director of Intergovernmental Affairs in the previous administration. Her past work experience also includes governmental affairs, constituent relations, and communication work in both private and public sectors. In 2010, Christina was proud to be named as one of South Jersey's Biz Magazine first ever list of rising stars in the Southern New Jersey business community. Yay, Christina. Additionally, every year since 2019, she has been listed on both New Jersey Biz Power List as one of the most powerful people in New Jersey business, as well as the ROI New Jersey Influencer Power List. Active in her community, Christina currently serves on boards of several nonprofit and community organizations in the region. She also is one of 100 chamber executives selected to the United States Chamber of Commerce CCC 100 committee, which is comprised of top 100 chamber executives in the nation. A graduate of Violin High School, she received her BA in Political Science, no surprise there, from St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, and her master's degree in Public Administration with a minor in City Management from Villanova University. So it is my pleasure to welcome Christina Renna. So, Christina, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to interview you for Something to Say podcast.
It's my pleasure. Anything you need me to do, I'm always a phone call away. You know that.
Great. So what we really want to do today is take a deep dive into business in South Jersey. And we know that you are extremely busy between the networking and supporting business leaders, as well as all your various members. But I think this is an excellent opportunity for people to get to know you better. So here at Something to Say, we like to ask you a few get to know you questions. So if you're up for that, we can begin the interview that way, and then we'll dive a little bit further into more business related conversations. So are you up for it?
I love it. I'm up for it.
All right. So your first question, and this is really one that might be very easy. What is your favorite childhood memory?
It's not easy. I have a lot to choose from, and I'm blessed for that. I would say probably holidays with my family, specifically Christmas time. Growing up, our household was the house that everyone gathered at. And so big 20, 25 person dinners with all the courses, my cousins running around, playing with toys. It was just jovial, fun. We're Italian, so always drama and fighting as well, but it somehow made the experience even more memorable and pleasant, if that makes any sense at all. So I would say probably if I had to pick one, it's those memories of growing up with my entire extended family.
Those are all very treasured memories, and I'm sure there's a lot of individuals in our audience who would share that with you. So individuals would really look at you and say, oh my God, she has it all together. Everything she does, it just turns to gold. So this next question, so this
That
next,
would be a false assumption, but we're going to go with it. Keep going.
so this question is maybe to get us a little more insight. What has been your biggest failure, and what did you really learn from that experience?
What I'll say is this: when I have failed, there's been a consistent common thread, I feel like. And that common thread is not trusting my gut instincts.
Mm,
So I make a mistake, but something in my gut told me I didn't listen. I didn't listen to what my intuition was telling me. Any kind of failure or mistake or something I look back on not following, something I look back on and think I would do differently. That's probably the common thread that weaves amongst all of those moments because we all have them. They're a part of being human, they're a part of being alive. But picking one, I don't think would be fair, other than beyond saying that that's that tying in theme. And therefore, the lessons I've learned from failure is to listen to what your inner voice is telling you, because you're probably right.
And that's such a meaningful message for you to send to a lot of those businesses that are part of the chamber, because I think many times they're often in that same position where they really have to kind of rely more than anything, aside from all their due diligence, what their gut feeling is that they feel as they go through.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So this question has been one of our most popular, and we love to make sure that we give everybody a chance to respond to it. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would that be and why?
This is a tough one. This is a hard one because my background is in political science and I sometimes lean into that. But then, my heart and what I do is in South Jersey. So let's go with Harriet Tubman. And I'll tell you why. Obviously, you know, abolitionist, social activists of her time, as we all we know the story, right?
Mhm.
Escaped slavery herself, involved in freeing so many other slaves. Unknown or not as widely known fact, all also really pivotal in fighting for the women's right to vote later in her life. Of course, not a lot of people know that because of that pivotal role she played
Mhm.
in fighting to end slavery. But I'll say Harriet Tubman for all those reasons, of course. Would love just to sit down and talk about her fearlessness and courage, dating back to the late 1800s, mid 1800s, and even into the early 1900s. But there's a South Jersey connection there. And, some people know this. I don't know how well known it is, but, she lived in Cape May. Um, at a period of her life where she was raising money to basically fund the missions to rescue and free slaves. She would live and work in Cape May to raise those funds to set out on those missions. And the Harriet Tubman Museum, our chamber was involved in making sure that was named in her honor in Cape May over the course of the past year and a half, something we're really proud of. So historical figure, amazing abolitionist activist of time, and South Jersey tie-in is always something I like to to try to do. So I think that checks all those boxes.
That's wonderful. It's interesting. One of our previous podcast interviews, Chantel, also mentioned Harriet Tubman.
Did
So
she really?
she absolutely did.
Well, Chantel is amazing and a good friend, and we podcast listeners know this was not planned. No, that is very funny. I can't wait to tell her.
It almost seems like we should probably do a Harriet Tubman program through the South Jersey Chamber, and highlight her contributions and her impact.
It's a very small museum, and so doing that has to be really thought through of how to get many people. But it's something I want to do because it's so important, not just to the history of Cape May, but to the region itself as well.
And it's also just so important to be able to share those stories. So thank you
100%.
so much for pointing that out. So speaking of story, I want to talk a little bit more about your story. So you've kind of mentioned that you have an Italian family. So why don't you tell us a little bit more background about your family?
Sure, sure. So both sides of my family are Italian. I am 100% Italian. Um, mom's side of the family, more from actually both sides of the family from southern Italy, but different places in Italy. One outside Naples, one more in the Sicily region. Was born in Atlantic City. Both of my dad's family and my mother's family ended up in South Jersey in the Vineland, Millville, Cumberland County area, Minnetonka, Newfield, Buna, that whole area. And so, yes, big Italian family. My parents were raised in Cumberland County. For a period of time, my parents lived in Ocean City. My grandfather was actually a builder later in his life, very successful builder in Ocean City. And so I was born in Atlantic City and lived in Ocean City as a baby. And then my parents moved me back to where our big family was into Cumberland County. So raised in the city of Vineland, went to Vineland High, went to college in Philadelphia, got my master's in Philadelphia or the outskirts of Philadelphia, and now currently live in Mount Laurel. So when you talk about kind of like where I'm from, my roots are obviously embedded in Italian culture and that family from that area of Cumberland County, but I really lived all throughout the region and also went to school semi-locally in Philly and Philly suburbs as well.
How interesting. And it really is a strong indicator why your role reaching that range of areas within southern New Jersey, you have such a strong connection because of your roots in this area, really understanding the nuances and the different cultures and the different priorities that really are set for each one of those different communities. So very exciting.
Every part of South Jersey is different. And so I think that is what's so interesting about the region in totality is Atlantic City's opportunities and challenges are very different than Camden Cities, and Cherry Hills are very different than Salem. And so it makes for living in a very interesting place where there's no shortage of things happening.
So there's just not one interpretation of us here in New Jersey at all.
There's not. There's not.
So I want to get a little bit more information about, how you really got your start to where you are today, because you've had such an interesting career. You've worked in government and now you're working through chamber. Can you give us kind of a sense of how you made that transition?
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up, I really never had a thing that I knew I wanted to do. I was a little bit of a mess, if I'm being honest, in high school. Definitely, I think the word train wreck would fit to those 4 years spent at Vineland High School. And yeah, that's for a lot of reasons, but I never really gravitated to anything. I never grew up thinking I want to be a teacher, I want to, be a nurse, whatever it may be. The one thing that I did find interested in is politics. And quite simply, like how a bill becomes a law and the art of persuasion and the debate between around public policy. And I did fall in love with that. So when it came time to go to college, I decided to really focus on political science as my kind of career path, generally speaking, not really knowing what I wanted to do with that. And so going to St. Joe's University in Philadelphia, I did major in political science, but again, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I wanted to be a lawyer, ended up doing an internship, hated it, knew I did not want to be a lawyer. Sometimes internships are just as good for what you learn that you don't want to do, as much as you learn what you maybe to get a foot in the door and something you do want to do. And so after graduating college with a political science degree, I tripped and fell into working in politics down in the first legislative district in New Jersey, which is Cape May County, Cumberland County, where I was raised, and working for a former assemblyman at that time, doing constituent services, which basically means, anyone that lived in that district that had a problem, they would call and I would try to help, which is really interesting to learn about some of the challenges that people were having, and some of the good things I had never heard about or learned about through that. From there, in and out of public and private sector, I worked at South Jersey Gas, the gas utility that serves the South Jersey area for a period of time, doing local government affairs, dealing with mayors predominantly. And then the job at the chamber opened up when I was 26 years old. And that job at the time was as a lobbyist for the Chamber of Commerce, which basically meant that I would be lobbying on policy that would be good for the South Jersey business community and South Jersey as a whole. I thought this is a position that was absolutely made for me.
Mhm.
Interviewed and got that job, and spent about 3 years at the South Jersey Chamber between before being asked to come in and interview to work for the former governor of the state of New Jersey, Chris Christie. So I did spend 4 years working for Governor Christie, his first term in office. After that stint was done in public service again, went back to private sector, came back to the chamber, and really started my evolution into where I am today, which led me to take over as president and CEO of the chamber in January 2020. So always in and around public policy, more so than politics. I wasn't into working on campaigns. I'm a very moderate person. Campaigns just always felt too ugly for me.
Mm.
But I love working on policy. And again, that art of persuasion, talking to people about what is important for South Jersey, because we're so often neglected in this part of the state. And, being able to articulate and form policy in a way that benefits the people and the businesses and the community here in South Jersey. I mean, this is the perfect fit for me. So that's a little bit of background. It's really the cross section of political science, policy, and it's led me to working in and around the business and nonprofit community as well.
I have to say, Christina, you explained it in such a way that is very seamless, right? So even though
I, I didn't practice in advance. It's just what I did. So
but
there
that
you go.
kind of describe how you kind of made your transitions. It seems like, as you had mentioned earlier, that you probably relied on your gut a lot. And to
Yeah.
that degree, you made some great decisions that really positioned you to be at the right place at the right time. So kudos to you. That was a great way to kind of summarize your career. But what I would
Thank you.
also ask you about that during that process, or maybe just in general, who has made the most influence with you in your life?
I would say definitely both of my parents. And I think that that's a product not just of my parents being great parents, but I'm an only child. And I do find it to be interesting. I feel like being an only child, it adds to the very natural bond that any child has with a parent because it's really just the three of you, right? And my parents were married 25, 26 years before they divorced, but they waited 12 years to have me. So they split up really when I was in high school. But always the focus was on family first
Hmm.
and keeping that family unit together even as they were splitting up. And what I'll say is just seeing how they handled those situations, and then just the fact that my mom and dad are two extraordinarily different human beings, like the fact they lasted 25 years in retrospect is actually shocking. I say that with all the love in the world, but they're very different people.
Right.
And both of them separately have influenced me. And I just sit before you today. I say this a lot, that I feel like I have taken the best of my mom and the best of my dad, and here I sit before you, and that's an honor, because my parents are both wonderful, and I'm lucky to have them both living and with me, and so yeah, I think if I had to pinpoint, it would definitely be my mom and my dad.
Well, it's such an interesting story that you share. And it is often that close knit connection, especially as you kind of describe your family, that really guides you with that level of influence. An
Yeah,
interesting story. My parents never divorced, but my grandparents divorced. And
interesting.
it was very interesting how they both maintained a strong connection. Very different personalities. One was very family oriented, one was very business oriented, but they
Yeah,
were both very much focused. So I can appreciate, as you kind of describe, how there's still
yeah,
that priority around family. So very
100%. Yeah.
so now I asked you about failure, and that's kind of a different way of maybe presenting this question, but it's one that, once again, I think to kind of get a better sense of who you are, to hear some of your response to it. So this question is, what was the best year of your life and what was the worst year of your life?
Um, I think the best year of my life was probably the year I got married. So that's 2012. I was a person who never wanted to get married and never wanted children.
Oh, wow.
So I'm one for one. I never had children. I have three amazing stepchildren, but I never had any children myself. And I ended up meeting my husband, who is older than me. He is almost 14 years older than me, at a time in my life that I was just shut down to all of it. And I had said that historically growing up, that I really never wanted to get married. I was surrounded by a lot of very strong women growing up, none of which really were married or had children. And I was an only.
Mm,
And so I say the best year of my life was the year I got married, because all of a sudden all these pieces kind of fit together that I never really thought would. And I never really yearned for it either.
mm,
But as a result, when it happened, it was even, I think, more beautiful because it happened so organically.
mm,
And so here I am, and getting married to my now husband after 5 years of dating him. And I am a part of a family unit with, three stepchildren. And it was also at a time that my career, I feel like, was really starting to trend upwards. I had made some good decisions. Um, you know, I'm not, I consider myself, as I said, a very moderate person. I did work for Chris Christie, say what you will. That 2012 time period was kind of an exciting time to be working in that administration. There's a lot of exciting things happening that he was doing in the state of New Jersey. And I knew I made the right choice going into that administration. And so the career was taking off. I had this so supportive husband and this family unit that I never really thought I wanted, that I wanted more than anything. And so I think that that's probably the best year of my life. And the worst year of my life was, with 100% certainty, 2014. So just 2 years later. And that, you know, is not something I really talk about publicly all that often. But in short, it was, working in politics, can bring along, scandal through no fault of your own. And I definitely got wrapped up in, some people doing some things they shouldn't, and a lot of media attention, national, international press, things that really impacted me, my young stepchildren at the time, my husband, my family. And it was debilitating for a while. I Early in 2014, I thought I would never be able to work again. Again, I didn't do anything wrong. I just happened to be like at the wrong place, the wrong time, working for the wrong people.
mm.
But it was really difficult time. I came out of it much stronger, but it took about 2 years to be able to shake that. And really entering 2017 is really, or 3 years. Entering 2017 is when I felt like that was gone. But so it's funny how from 2012, this feeling of like euphoria and gratefulness and feeling like things are really going your way. And then just 2 years later, things come crashing down. That was, predominantly work related, but
Mm.
really impacted my whole family in a way that I really have a lot of regrets around. And again, not trusting my gut got me into a situation that, I didn't need to be in, had I thought through some stuff a
Right.
little bit more, if that makes sense.
It does. And let me just say thank you so much for how honest you are in answering that question. And what we have found when we answer that question of those who we interview, there is such a connection to the purpose of the podcast, about the passion that people use as their inspiration, the highs of their life and how they kind of navigate the lows of their life, and how through those trials and tribulations, you live a better life. You live a life that has greater meaning, greater clarity, and greater impact. So I congratulate you in terms of how you navigated that, but how you've been able to turn it into the success of your career today.
Thank you for that. It was a time. It was a time, and we all have them, right? And you just gotta keep looking ahead and keep your head up. So,
Absolutely. So let's talk about business. And
oh,
you are probably one of the best people to make a dive into that. And there's three questions I'd like to ask you about business, kind of centered upon the trends that we see. So,
Okay.
what are some of the big trends that you see that are really developing in business today?
Oh, I mean, it's all over the news, so this isn't going to be super shocking, but AI, artificial intelligence, the impact that's having on business operations, life in general is dramatic. And I think, AI, people's fear around it, government's inability to keep regulations up with the speed of technology, creates a lot of fear around AI. But AI, if used well and right, can be something that can really help your business grow. So definitely that automation. As we sit here today, and I know this podcast is not going to come out for a few weeks, so we'll see where we are in a few weeks. But as we sit here today, there is a massive strike at our ports around the nation. That those strikes at those ports that are import export hubs of America, it is all around automation and the port workers not wanting their ports to be automated because they fear that that means their jobs will go away. So automation is something that is trend you're seeing that can help make a business run more efficiently, but certainly has a downside as you look at maybe impact on people. So that's something that's being talked about a lot. I would say those are the two big trends that are constantly in the headlines and that really impact business operations, but also the people that work in businesses.
Right. And for so many businesses, the integration of artificial intelligence was something that many feared maybe 2 years ago. And now, to some degree, there's a greater sense of perhaps can it be a successful component in how I make my business a success? But
Yeah,
at the same time, how do I strike that balance where it doesn't, become a bit of disruptor, in terms of my business?
exactly right. Exactly right. And so it is the hottest topic, to
Well,
be honest with you. So
what are some of the misconceptions that you see that are out there today around business that you'd maybe like to take a minute to clear up?
I think probably the biggest by far is that businesses are bad, that businesses are evil. And that kind of trends with, political narratives as we live in such this heightened political environment, um, that itself can be so ugly and evil. But that narrative around businesses are bad, corporations are bad, is, I think, a massive and unfair misconception. It's interesting when influencing public policy as we relate to the business community. You talk to a policymaker and they want to do everything they can to help small businesses. Like small businesses are good, but major corporations are really bad,
Hmm.
right? But major corporations are creating, the drugs that are going to heal the disease that your father has, or making the product that your daughter absolutely falls in love with, or whatever it is. At the end of the day, I think businesses are about people, right? Businesses have a responsibility to be good to their employees and treat their employees well, be good and serve their customers well. And if they do those two things, you know, they're going to end up with a loyal customer base, client base, whatever it may be. And people should not think of these enterprises as necessarily evil. I'll say this and I'll get off my high horse on this. So you probably wish you didn't ask this question, but you look at, I mean, I'm passionate about it too, but you look at a Starbucks, and don't get me wrong, Starbucks is an imperfect company, corporation. Um, but when I say it's like about people, you may hate Starbucks as a corporation, hate some of the decisions executive leadership makes, hate it. And you're fair and right in that feeling. But maybe you have a Starbucks on your corner and you go in every morning after you drop your kids off on, the way to school, and the baristas know your drink, know your name, have it ready for you, know you're going to be in a rush because it's about people. So even these big companies, it's still local, it's still human, it's still people, it's still connectivity.
Mm.
And I think if we stop thinking about business in this big ugly way and just think of it as people, I think maybe that misconception could possibly go away.
Right.
So I don't know if that's really the answer to the question you were looking for as you're talking about trends and innovation, but
No, actually, it was a very
that's
interesting perspective you share. And, having served on various boards of different chambers, I know the interesting world within chambers is we have the small business priority and focus that we have, the small little mom and pop, as well as the big companies, and how those two really come together, which is ultimately in developing great communities where people live. You want that big business that helps to drive economic activity and stabilization of the economy of that destination, while there still is an opportunity for local businesses to grow and become successful in their own way. So you're absolutely right. How do we help people clear that misconception that one is good and one is bad, because they both really contribute to the success of any city.
at the end of the day, there's bad business people, just like there's bad
Right.
teachers and doctors and lawyers, and the list goes on. But painting with the broad brush that every large corporation is bad, I think, is an unfair misconception.
I have one last question around trends, and I know you've talked about artificial intelligence, but has there been a breakthrough in the use of that? Maybe even as you operate the chamber, that you're like, yes, I am so glad that we have this type of technology that we can use today that really helps to make a very positive difference.
The lessons we learned from the pandemic, and the ability to have virtual meetings and virtual gatherings and be able to work from home has changed the landscape of businesses across the board, and how they operate. And so from a chamber of commerce perspective, a chamber of commerce, as you well know, right, we're about getting people to meet face to face, shake hands, exchange a business card, build a relationship. But now we can do that online. And I think that has been the single biggest change in really any industry and any business, large or small, is that they're finding this efficiency around embracing virtual, whatever it may be. Is it perfect? No. Do I still think face-to-face is better? Yes. But yeah, so I mean, not super innovative because we are now through the pandemic, but that was a lesson taught from that I think is one that has changed the landscape of business for better and for worse. Because at the end of the day, in person things are always still best and better, but you still have this very much a lane of folks that are only wanting to do things through a computer screen. So managing that has become a struggle, but I do think that there is a path of efficiency there as well.
Right. Plus, it also allows us to connect with people outside of our normal physical space to get things done that probably would have been a whole lot more complicated in other ways. But I do want to talk about specifically South Jersey and some of the chamber things. So in a broad stroke, how would you describe the state of business in New Jersey?
I think the state of business in the state as a whole is fine. I don't think it's thriving. I don't think it's struggling. I think it's fine. Inflation is real, and that is really serving as a challenge for businesses generally. Operating in a state like New Jersey, that's an extremely high cost, high tax state. In addition to some of those kind of, issues that we're seeing nationally, like, higher inflation, that trickles down again, back to the people, right? It trickles down to the consumer, it trickles back down to the people. And so I think businesses have learned to operate creatively since the pandemic. And I don't think things are terrible by any stretch. Things could always be better. But a high tax state like New Jersey, businesses are always going to struggle with that because doing business in other states is always going to be more affordable, and therefore products are going to be able to be produced or services are going to be able to be rendered at a lower rate outside of New Jersey. And that makes for businesses hard to compete with, especially if they're doing so outside of state lines.
Great. I also wanted to talk to you about small businesses, and we are in a bit of a political season. There's been a lot of discussion about dollars that can be made available for small businesses. Yay, that would help to give them a running start. But How are small businesses really doing in today's economy from what you see?
I would say they're doing less than fine, but also not awful. And again, that's because the inflation rates do hit them more than a larger business that can absorb those kinds of costs. I think that incentives, you're hearing a lot about that. The state of New Jersey offers some really generous incentives for small businesses as well. But just because that incentive is offered doesn't mean that that small business owner or that entrepreneur can take advantage. Do they have the credit that they need to be able to take advantage?
Hmm.
Do they have just the business IQ to know how to fill out these extraordinarily complicated applications well and right and check every box the right way? Because if they missed one thing, their application is going to get denied, and they took 2 days off of working on their small business to apply for an incentive that they're not going to get.
Hmm.
So these are all very real things that your mom and pop, your main street, your small businesses, your startups, deal with every day. Incentives are wonderful, but if the small business owner doesn't have the time, the knowledge to be able to commit to that, there's no benefit there.
Hmm.
So I think, but I do think that under the circumstances, I think small businesses are doing fine. They're finding, costs are up, and that's not news to anyone. And that's very real. But I think at the end of the day, as costs do continue to rise or have remained at a higher rate, the state is doing what they need to do to be able to provide those incentives and help. It's just, are those resources being communicated outwardly? Do people know about them, and do they know how to take advantage of them?
And I think as you kind of described, through whatever municipality you're in, leaning into your chamber or your business association can really supply you with the expertise, the knowledge, and some of the skill sets that are going to be necessary to navigate what the challenges might be as a small business.
Yes.
I also wanted to talk about like some of the new economic development projects that might be on the horizon for New Jersey. Can you share some insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest ones are probably ones that are in the news a lot. A lot of innovation and excitement around renewable energy. Wind energy is controversial in some areas, especially of South Jersey, but South Jersey has all the things it needs to be the hub for wind energy in the state as a renewable energy source. And so any kind of advancements we can make in that space, we're building a new industry, which means we're creating new jobs. New skills need to be learned to be able to, make those jobs work for you. But it's really exciting. So I think that wind energy specifically in South Jersey, renewable energy would be one. The state is doing some creative things around enticing and encouraging film, the film industry to flourish in New Jersey. There are some incentives that have been very generously built to encourage Netflix, for example, to come to Monmouth County, not in South Jersey, more in Central Jersey, but down in Atlantic City, the old pier outside of Caesar's Casino out over past the boardwalk, that's being turned into a film studio where music videos can be shot. Indie films are currently being shot. So that's another area that's kind of really, really cool and exciting that I think New Jersey is exploring and could have a lot of potential. And I would probably say opportunities around the World Cup is really exciting. And South Jersey is uniquely positioned in a good way and a bad way. Bad is that we don't have any of the games coming necessarily to South Jersey, but good because South Jersey is positioned in such a way that Philadelphia, the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia is hosting games for the World Cup in 2026. But additionally, up at the Meadowlands in North Jersey, not only are they hosting games, but the final game is going to be there. So that is creating a lot of opportunity for smaller businesses, people that provide goods and services in South Jersey to get in that procurement wheel with FIFA. Really exciting stuff, and once in a lifetime type of opportunities for the state.
So there's definitely some positive opportunities that are coming our way, and it gives a few different areas that are very unique and different for businesses to pursue their choices. But I do want to, before we begin to close our interview, talk about the Southern New Jersey Chamber, because I know we have some fantastic events that are coming up before the year is over. So can you share some highlights of some of the must attend or must sees?
Listen, let me tell you, Greg, this is going to air later in October. I think we're still going to have about 22 events, 20 events between mid-October through the end of the year. Our chamber, I call our Chamber of Commerce, our number one product is our events. We're a very event-driven chamber, and that means a little bit of everything, right? I have businesses that really just want to get out and network. Like I said before, kind of, shake hands, exchange business cards, get to know their fellow business people from the area, hopefully generate some business from that. I have members that just want to come out to learn about, the new economic development projects happening, like we just talked about, and some opportunities around that. I have events around policymakers. We're apolitical at the chamber. Whoever the people elect, it's our job to give the members of the chamber exposure to them, and they can choose whether or not they want to take advantage of that or not. But a lot of things around that. And of course, our annual meeting and holiday party is December 12th. This year, it's at the Legacy Club in Cherry Hill, and it is a historic annual meeting for us because it is our year of a change in leadership, and it is the first time in the chamber's history that we will not only have a female chair of the board, but our first African American chair of the board as well, in Robin Walton from Inspira Health. So a really exciting, historic for a chamber that's 151 years old. To have our first Black chair of the board that's going to be leading this organization is something we're really looking forward to celebrating on December 12th. So right after that, we move right into our holiday party and have a glass of champagne and say cheers to the year that was, and specifically to Robin Walton, our incoming chair of the board. So a lot on tap. And then, of course, just planning for next year.
Wow.
We're already knee deep in that. So
well, congratulations. And I look forward to the annual meeting. I'm sure it is going to be fabulous. I'm going to get my ticket early. So
thank you.
All right, so we're moving towards the end of our podcast, and one of our favorite questions is really associated with the name of the podcast. We are called Something to Say. So we want to ask you, what do you have to say?
I have to say that I'm filled with gratitude, that I know that I am extraordinarily fortunate in doing something that I love, something that I'm passionate about, and that allows me to give back to the community in which I was born, raised my family here as well. I just think if I have something to say, it's that I'm very lucky. And as it relates to my work at the chamber, filled with gratitude as it relates to the team we've constructed at our chamber. We are an 11-person all-female team, 11 fabulous, fierce, strong, hardworking women that lead the largest and most influential business organization in this part of the state, is something I'm tremendously proud of. And of course, our chamber members, getting to expose them to this region or maybe other areas of South Jersey they're unfamiliar with, in an effort to grow their business and help their customers hopefully flourish and succeed. It's all good. And so if I have one thing to say, it's that I'm blessed and I'm very grateful.
Well, let me tell you, I am so thrilled that I had the opportunity to talk to you. I could probably talk to you for another hour, but we've put this limit on our podcast. But what I will tell
Oh,
you,
us, we could chat, you and I. So we know
but I
that
will tell
already.
you that your passion certainly has had a great influence, not just obviously on your career, but the work that you do and how it benefits the citizens and the businesses of South Jersey. So, as a person who lives in South Jersey, I want to thank you for all that you do. And I want to thank you for joining us on Something to Say podcast.
Now, listen, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, anytime I can spend some time with you, I look forward to doing so. But thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Well, listeners, you've had a fantastic treat today having Christina speak to us. And I would like to share to each and every one of you, if you've enjoyed today's conversation, please join us for a future Something to Say podcast. So for right now, this is Greg DeShields saying thank you for joining us, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.